Hey, it is about 10 minutes to 9 Arizona time on Wednesday, March 19th of 2025. And instead of a Trump impersonation, this is going to be a little rant about politics. And trigger warning, it's probably going to upset some people a bit. There are a lot of protests over how Donald Trump is handling immigration. And how immigration ties in with people's civil rights and the future of this country's experiment with Republican government. And I'm going to talk about why I don't take any of these protests or any of the people lodging these protests particularly seriously. And I don't think anybody listening to this should either. I worked in human rights. I have a work history in human rights. I took two legal master's degrees, what we in America would call an LLA and an LLM, from La Universidad Carlos III de Madrid, Spanish university, between 2010 and 2013. So I know the international law on human rights pretty backwards and forwards, and I know the United States constitutional law on human rights pretty well, both in our own perspective and in an international comparative perspective. I know the law on these subjects. I received valedictory honors for my LLM in 2013. I've worked in human rights. I've worked with non-governmental organizations, uh, mostly in Spain, also in a couple different United States. And my big specialties were terrorism related offenses and the conflict in Western Sahara when I was involved in that kind of work. Point is, I know the laws around this area, and I have a certain amount of sympathy for people that are facing violations of their human rights. And I have come to realize that the international laws on the subject are not worth the paper they're written on. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is very clear, that when you immigrate into a country, the people that are taking you in, your host country, is supposed to basically take your name and your ID and let you in and welcome you in. And unless you can justify it by a time of war or some other real extenuating circumstance, you're not supposed to have this system where you differentiate between citizens and permanent residents and undocumented immigrants. You're not supposed to have this entire apparatus under international law. And almost all the countries in the world have ratified it before the United Nations, and no one obeys it. It's literally not worth the paper that it's written on. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is just illegal from it. Most of the actions that they take is just illegal from a basic, strict constructionalist, technical reading of international law. It shouldn't be around. But it is around. And that's why we have these protests over Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian refugee who was arrested by ICE and illegally moved across state lines to a detention center in Louisiana for doing pro Palestinian protests at Columbia University. during the Israeli bombing campaign on Gaza, and and this system is also making a lot of people worried because of the deportation flights of Venezuelan migrants. Donald Trump has designated Venezuela a national security threat under the Enemy Alien Act of 1798. Yes, you heard that right, 1798. And he's saying we can just do whatever we want to Venezuelans and treat them as though they're a national security risk, this and that. I disagree with what this country has done to Mahmoud Khalil. I disagree with that. He's guilty of inciting the illegal occupation of some university spaces. He is pretty clearly not guilty of supporting a terrorist organization, which he's being charged with. That's free speech. He was not, that we know of, giving arms or money to the Hamas terrorists. He was doing free speech because this is the land of his ancestors, and he was illegally arrested, moved illegally to immigration detention center in Louisiana. He shouldn't even be in the hands of the immigration system at all because he's a lawful permanent resident. He's married to a United States citizen. We shouldn't be able to just massively deport Venezuelans without due process under a 200-year-old law. But the fact remains, the Trump administration has illegally arrested Mahmoud Khalil. They're going to do whatever they want with him. None of the sign waving and none of the protesting and none of the armchair warrior meme sharing on the internet is going to matter. Because they have all the power, and if you protest it, they can do whatever they want to you. And this stuff about deporting Venezuelans under a 220-something-year-old law is really, really shady, but the law is still on the books, and the Democrats have held Congress for 200-and-something years. The Democrats have been a force in Congress for 200-and-something years. Never did anything to repeal the Alien Act of 1798, you'll notice. And never did anything to harmonize the United States immigration system with international law. The Alien Act of 1798 is barbaric, needs to be done away with. The detention of Mahmoud Khalil and other people, other immigrants, he's not the only one, for exercising their free speech rights, is barbaric and undemocratic. Protesting and sign waving and armchair meme warrioring and virtue signaling is not the way to do this. You have a left wing in this country that's a bunch of people dedicated to big words, and a right wing in this country that's dedicated to doing shit. A lot of illegal, repugnant, undemocratic things, but they're dedicated to doing shit. You put very simply, you have a party of talkers versus a party of doers. And the party of doers is going to win every single time. So, the left wing in this country can get me to give my energy to protesting for immigrants' rights when they force this country to live up to its obligations under international law. That's a lot of big things. That's getting rid of ICE. That's getting rid of the surveillance state we have in this country. That's a lot of big things. Force this country to live up to its obligations under international law and repeal the Alien Act. Notice there's no one even putting forward a bill in Congress right now to make the United States adhere to its obligations under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And there's no one putting forward even a bill in Congress to repeal the Alien Act of 1798. So all you people saying we have a moral imperative to protest and this and that, fuck off. Fuck off. You have a legal imperative if you want the laws to be friendlier to the people that you want to be friendly to. Go out and change the rules. Until then, stop fucking wasting my time.